Okay, everybody, don't touch that dial. We've got plenty coming up this morning. Take your seats, get yourselves nice and comfortable because we're celebrating our first superstar session this morning. We're going to be talking about in-play ad monetization, past, present and future. If you've got any questions, don't hesitate to put them into the Zoom. If you're watching online, hello. You can hashtag PG Connects. You can also follow us at PG Connects. If you don't know who I am, I'm Kelly Vera. I'm going to be your hostess with the mostess for all of this morning, right the way up until we finish. And coming up right now, we've got the most interesting thing that really came out of Marvel, not the Avengers, but the real Thor. Here he comes. Give it up to Thor, please. He's incredible. He's from our sponsors, Adverty. I want you to give him a warm welcome.
Super fun to be here, to be back in the dungeon. I always forget how hard it is to find your way around here, but it's great to be back, and it's good to be back at this venue. And I'm here to talk about in-play ads, what is happening with them, trying to look a lot at the history and extrapolate from there to try and figure out where things are going. I represent a company called Adverty. We're Swedish-based, although we are very distributed with teams here in the UK, Russia. I'm actually based out of Finland. We provide in-play ads. We have kind of gone a little bit ass backwards. We started out with VR many years ago, couldn't find a market. Pivoted to AR a couple of years still ago, couldn't find a market, and then we ended up with good old-fashioned mobile games, where of course it's an enormous market. We have a multi-patented technology. It's an SDK-based solution, and our patents are mainly in the area of viewability, which for many game developers kind of is a new term. So I'm going to spend some extra time talk about that later. And yeah, we focus, for the moment, 95% on mobile games. We are super, super keen and excited about AR and VR because it's such a cool format for what we're doing. So we're just waiting for that to kind of emerge. Super briefly about myself, I've been doing one way or another mobile gaming and mobile advertising since 2006. Started out in the ringtone game way back in the day. And even back then, there were games trying to put ads inside of them for these like Nokia, Ericsson racing games, and people try to figure that out. I spent roughly half of my time working with game studios and the other half working in the ad tech space. I've been kind of bouncing left and right between the two. So, my wife is an academic, so I try to learn from her and be focused and less bullshitty. So let's first define what is in-play advertising, because it can be many things. And I'm not saying that this is the definition everyone needs to use, but for the purpose of this discussion, what am I defining as in-play? So these are completely native ads that really exist inside the game. They're not in the menu, they're not an interstitial, they're not breaking things up. You're playing Grand Theft Auto, you're driving down the street, you see a billboard and it's an actual ad. Or you're playing football and someone has a logo on their thing and it's an actual paid ad, and where the payment is built around the view, like has the ad actually been displayed? I think these ads are really fun to work with. I'm going to be talking a fair amount about rewarded video soon, because I'm looking at rewarded video as kind of as a sub-industry, and we look at like how did rewarded video develop, and then we're going to do the same thing for in-play. But they're very, very fun because you have to work with the game designers. Right? Rewarded video is slap an icon of a shiny diamond somewhere in the interface, click it, you get your reward. This becomes much more organic, much more native, and it kind of becomes a part of the game design process, which becomes really, really fun. And yeah, the more intrusive and seamless you can make the ads, the better they will perform. The more your players will like them, the more advertisers will like them, and just overall, things will improve on that level. So, a very brief history of crappy screenshots, I'm calling it, right? Ad monetization in games has been around for a long time. It's been developing and maturing, well over a decade. We're getting close to 20 years now, actually. There's been several different formats: banners, interstitials, offer walls, rewarded video, and now we're seeing in-play emerge. There's other things as well, like in audio ads as well, also really interesting, and a new format that again is like, well, okay, I'd argue that audio ads for me would be quite intrusive, and I don't want to shit talk them, like, but for me, like, I either have it muted or I listen to podcasts when I play my games, but that's a different thing. But I mean, it's intrusive in this, non-intrusive in the sense that it doesn't interrupt your gameplay experience. It doesn't make you do anything else. You can keep doing what you're doing and at the same time be served up an ad. Most of these ad formats have followed fairly similar patterns. Again, if you look at it, if you look at each of these ad formats as a subsection of the advertising industry or what have you, you can see fairly similar things with hesitant adoption, mass adoption, maturity, mediation, and etc. Like, they do tend to follow a playbook, which does makes a lot of sense. It's of course impossible to define this exactly, right? But I would say banners and interstitials and offer walls really were the earliest ones. I think that they created back in, so what would this be? Let's say 2008, 9, 10-ish, like before kind of in-app purchase explosion, which I would define as 2011, 2012. I do think that they got a very poor reputation, and therefore in-game advertising in general got a really poor reputation, particularly among developers and coders, because they're the ones who have to do all the work and have to make stuff actually work within the games, and there were a lot of problems with these back in the day. I joined the ad tech space when rewarded video was really breaking through. And that's really what I want to, again, go through a little bit, like how did rewarded video develop, mature as an industry, then look at where is in-play ads today and where do we think that that's going. So briefly, right, and full transparency, of course, I was with AdColony for many years, so I'm slightly biased towards AdColony, although they did fire me, so I'm not that biased. But I'm viewing things through AdColony tinted glasses, so to say. So I would argue that AdColony invented the tech. Back when the company was called Gerbo, Jonathan Zweig and the team in the US kind of built, like, they were doing games for the App Store and like, hey, we can't make any money, let's figure out a way to show video ads, and they just kind of did it, which is kind of cool. There was a very hesitant adoption up until roughly 2014, and that's also when I joined, and we're part of then sort of the very last parts of hesitant adoption, which I call, because these were scenarios where you had to spend several hours talking to game publishers, and you had to hold their hand, and you had to really explain to them that these videos are not going to destroy your game, people are not going to leave your game, you're going to make a lot of money, and it's going to be a really valuable source of income. The reason for hesitancy in adoption, and again, not just rewarded video, but across a lot of fields, is that there's not necessarily maturity in tech. Most SDKs are relatively new, most APIs are relatively new, and things are being set up, so there hasn't been a wide standardization yet, and that makes it, particularly for smaller developers, much more of a challenge, right? You don't have an R&D department, and your CTO is, besides building the games, doing everything else. Like, it's kind of hard to start experimenting too much. But towards around 2014, there really was a shift. I attribute a large part of that to Supercell. They started showing rewarded ads in heyday. And then I think sort of the collective game industry said, well, if Supercell's doing it, it's kind of got to be good. And, you know, kind of was. Then starting from somewhere around 2015, we entered the stage of what I call mass adoption. And that's when things started growing extremely quickly. Rewarded video for a lot of developers very quickly, even more than I think that both developers and us providers expected, how large of a share of total revenue rewarded video became. It was highly competitive. So 2015, we have AdColony, we have Bungle, we have AppLovin. I'm not sure if Unity Ads, yeah, no, Unity Ads were doing things then as well. LoopMe, etc. Like there were, it was a battlefield. It was tons of providers fighting for market share. The vast majority of them very heavily VC backed. So really big minimum guarantees, integration bonuses, lavish parties, all the fun stuff. And it's sort of between 2015 and 2016 that I would estimate somewhere between, in the beginning it was maybe 5 to 10% of eligible games that were using it, and 2 years later that number was well north of 75%. So it was a massive adoption there, and if you're a business nerd, like insane value was created in companies like Bungle, companies like AppLovin, who kind of started out in this field and are now behemoths of our industry. The other thing that happened towards the tail end of this, so if you want to, you can merge the one in the bottom and the one on the top is, so late-ish 2015, thereabouts, Q3, Q4, Mediation really stepped in and completely changed the game for the providers, and to some extent also from the game publishers. For many publishers, it became easier. You could source the highest revenue from many different sources, and your overall benefit grew from that. And at the same time, around maybe slightly later, there's what I call a parity in technology. Like at that point, like all SDKs were basically the same. No difference anymore. Again, with my AdColony heart, like we were kicking ass up until 2016 because we were just the best at delivering video. No one could beat us. We had no delays, no chops, good bit rates. Like our videos just looked a lot better. But then all of a sudden, everyone else caught up, and you can't make a video look even better than great, like 60 frames per second, what have you. Like you can't do anything more beyond it. So at that point, right, SDK technology kind of became obsolete. To quote Karl Marx on stage, the tools of production have been democratized. Everyone could kind of do it, right? You wanted to build your own video delivery SDK. Yeah, it's not really that hard. Information is out there, etc. And from 2017 onwards, there was also then massive consolidation within the business, and things kind of settled down, right? Most game developers, they had their mediation partner, they had their partners for ads being provided, and things kind of just rolled on from there. Now, let's change things around a little bit. I would say that currently with in-play ads, we are right here between hesitant adoption and we're on our way to mass adoption. I am hoping that this year is going to be the year of mass adoption. Everything points towards that. And the reason for this is kind of here, right? It's been a pipe dream for over 20 years. Like I said, since 2006, I have either I have had people tell me brand advertisement dollars are coming to games, or I have been the one saying brand advertisement dollars are coming to games. And yeah, it's been 15 years, and like, yeah, they are coming, but not really. But famous last words, they're coming this year. So forget all the other 15 times I've said it over the past decade or so, they're coming this year. And there's a couple of good reasons for this, right? Tech is really solid. Our SDK has been in the wild for over 3 years. Most of our competitors have had their SDKs out for about 2.5 years. So it's solid, like it's not spectacular yet, but it's solid. There's definitely been a need from developers to look at different sources of monetizations, new revenue streams to have added. Partially thanks to Apple, right? If you're an ad-driven game, if a large chunk of your in-game revenue is coming from ads, particularly on iOS, then like the changes in depreciation of IDFA, etc., really hurt your revenues. So you need new ones. And the way we do, since in-play ads, they're not clickable, there's no attribution, there's nothing like that happening. It's like seeing an ad for Coca-Cola on a bus stop. It's just about building awareness. We aren't affected by that in the same level. On the downside of that is, of course, CPMs are much worse, Performance people, they can afford to pay, as you know, they have their CPI targets, and as long as they're within X% of that, it's just unlimited spend coming. With brand advertisement, it is different, but it is still completely incremental revenue, and it's there to offset some of the losses from other sources. I also really believe that having new revenue sources, and the previous presentation about subscriptions is also a very good indicator of that. Like, our industry would be a much healthier ecosystem if there was more advertising revenue coming externally. I am not nearly smart enough or have access to the data to figure that out, but I really wonder what percentage of mobile game ad spend that is made by mobile game companies. It feels like well north of 75%, probably 90%. And that's fairly incestuous, right? It's kind of the same money is spinning around and spinning around. You make a hyper-casual game, and then you promote it, and then you get ad money to sort that back, and hopefully you have a margin at the end of the day, and it just keeps cycling. So adding and injecting new revenue from outside will be very good for the gaming ecosystem overall. And there's really much more interest than ever before from advertisers. Lockdown for 2 years kind of helped a little bit with that. The overall sort of shift of attention towards the smaller screen is also starting to penetrate the larger advertisers. They're starting to understand the value of being seen when people are also actively engaged. And like, that's another thing, like, you guys are not advertisers, so I don't have to sell it, but whenever you talk to advertisers, remind them, like, gaming is an active medium. TV is a passive medium. Radio is a passive medium, like, it comes to you, but gaming you're actually engaged with. And then find someone who's good at cognitive psychology, and they will tell you everything about, like, how cool that is and how that makes your brand stand out and those kinds of things. But I mean, advertisers, again, they are starting to be really interested in this, and they're starting to look into to the thing. And we see that on our end in terms of course, revenues increasing, we see eCPMs increasing, and we see more and more advertisers come along. And with all the hype around metaverse and these types of things, and the reality, at least as far as I can tell, is that, well, yeah, sure, the metaverse is there, but it's not really there. If you're Coca-Cola and you want to spend a ton of money on that kind of thing, yeah, maybe you go to Roblox, but then, like, Roblox isn't more metaverse than a mobile shooter. So, like, all of the interest from that, it really helps us in the game industry as well. So what value does this bring to developers? Well, first and foremost, of course, revenue. This is the game business with an emphasis on business. In-play ads from us or from any of our competitors or anyone in the market to set expectations, right? 5% increase in a 5% increase in revenue, that's good. That's really solid. We're not going to break your bank. It's not Ferrari and champagne for money, champagne for breakfast kind of money, but it is a very healthy addition. And if you're a company that is very driven by user acquisition with a strict focus on CPIs, maybe you have figured this out. I hope you have. Like, the best way to improve your CPI is actually to improve your monetization, because it's much easier to improve monetization. The more money you make, the more money you can spend. Lower a CPI is really hard because it's also been so automated, creative automation, black box buying, etc. This is really, the second one is really important, and it's maybe super simple and straightforward, but I really want to hammer it in, right? This is 100% incremental revenue, and incremental meaning new. It doesn't take from anything else. It doesn't affect your interstitials, it doesn't affect your rewarded video, it doesn't create any new elements. Nothing new is being done. You're just working better and more with what you already have. And that's key. I should remove the mostly because it is a very easy and fast integration from a technical point of view. If your game is Unity-based, it's like an afternoon for a developer. Then you might need to slot some time from your game designers or from your level designers or maybe from UX people. Like, have a think about how to display it within the game in a good way, because that really helps. Of course, the bigger you can make the ads, the better. McDonald's want their hamburgers to look big and juicy, not small and compressed. So like they just want to have really big things. And in many games, right, this will actually improve the feeling of the game. Most sports games for decades, they've been putting fake ads within their games. Because if you watch sports and don't see any ads, I don't know what kind of sports you're watching. Real life city games as well, like your typical Grand Theft Auto-y type thing. My favorite example is from Critical Force shooter, where they approach it differently on different levels. Like in some levels, you're in sort of a deserty type town, and then there's like a few boss stops, there's an ad here and there. Then there's it's basically Counter-Strike, right? It's a 5 versus 5 shooter. And then there's one level where you're in an airport. And as we've all been reminded now that we can travel again, airports are full of ads. So then they just increase the frequency, like they make more placements, and it actually feels natural. It makes the level stand out a little bit more, and those types of things. So this is what I believe the reasons why 2022, this is going to be the year of mass adoption on the developer side. By our estimates, roughly 5% of audiences are exposed to in-play ads, give or take, depends on how you define them and etc. But like, that's roughly where we're at. My prediction is that we're going to be definitely north of 50, I would guess 60% by the end of this year. Some of the very, very biggest names and the biggest developers are moving forward now very quickly with this. They are integrating it into more and more of their titles. They're setting up processes for it. They're including it in the design process of the games, sort of thinking about this for the future. And as with many other things, like once the really big developers start doing it, there's a whole ecosystem of smaller developers who just like, well, okay, let's look at the ones who make the most money and let's copy what they're doing, right? Nothing wrong with that. It's a very smart way to operate. You can be lean and mean. And this is what's going to be happening this year. And first, yeah, I tried to do some sort of Tony Montana thing, but I couldn't really make it work. But I mean, there's always a chicken and an egg, right? Where inventory versus demand. And in this scenario, it is actually quite easy. Like the inventory has to come first. It always does. And if you look at all of the previous ad formats, inventory was always there well before the demand. But as the inventory comes this year and as it increases by several orders of magnitude, this will for sure make it far more exciting and appealing to advertisers. Then there's as well mediation on the horizon, right? I am certain that in-play ads will very similarly mimic rewarded video ads, but at a highly accelerated pace. It won't take us 6 years to go from, or it won't take us 2 years to go from mass adoption to kind of mediation, and it will move much faster for the market to stabilize. And what's really interesting, again, if you're a business nerd, currently all of the players who are doing in-play ads are new companies. None of the big guys started doing this, which is kind of funny and strange to me because Unity, Apple, I mean, these guys could have done it relatively easily. But all of the companies who are doing what we're doing right now, we're relatively small, we're independent, but I'm certain there's going to be consolidation on that side as well. But yeah, with mass adoption among publishers, standardization will be highly beneficial for the industry as a whole, and it's going to happen. To some extent, there already is a fair amount of standardization. Pretty much all in-game or in-play ad providers, we use the same kind of formats. It's a box, it's a landscape, it's a widescreen, but that just kind of has to be codified and officially agreed upon. So as a developer, you can place an ad unit and you say, well, okay, I can show ads from AdMix, Adverty, Gads. Like, it doesn't really matter. Like, we all use the same ad format. You just put that one in and see how it goes from there. But as has been seen, right, mediation will for sure be required also to benefit from the programmatic traffic which is out there and which will be increasing. So someone is going to start doing mediation. I don't know who. I saw Unity is the Unity guy here talking after me. Yeah, cool. Let's have a chat. You guys should do it. Set up a team in Finland. I come by and help you. Yeah, real-time bidding, header bidding. I mean, again, all of these things, they're boring and unsexy to me, so I don't want to talk about them. But like, all of this is coming. And again, look at the history, look at today, look at tomorrow. It seems relatively clear. And I wouldn't be surprised if 2 years from now, probably all of these guys provide some sort of in-play ad monetization mediation solution where they will partner up with the providers. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if these companies end up buying 1, 2, or 3 of us who are doing this right now, because that also makes a ton of sense, especially since, well, at least the 2 blue ones in the middle are doing their own games as well. Like, it's kind of feels like a no-brainer to me. Okay, let's talk a little bit more just specifically about the games. Contextual fit is really, really important. If you're making a Game of Thrones games, I don't want to talk to you about ads, talk to you about other things, but like, no one wants to see a Call of Duty Warzone banner in Game of Thrones. Doesn't work. Dungeons and Dragons doesn't work. That kind of thing. So you have to think about the contextual or the narrative fit within your game. Does this make sense? Would there be an ad here? Hyper-casual works really, really well. In some instances, as are many things with hyper-casual, not to offend anyone, but in many instances, right, it's not the best or most beautiful placements or things. Shit moves fast, so they do things fast, but they also do it really well. So hyper-casual tends to work really nicely. Even if there might be a little bit of a clash in the look of the graphics, some of the hyper-casual games have more like pixelated 8-bit type graphics, still works quite nice. And there's an extra benefit for advertisers that we can sell towards them, saying that because there's usually a level of immediacy, right? The lifetime of a person playing a hyper-casual game is not weeks, months, it's days or hours. So you know you're getting fresh eyeballs, and you know that this is something that is hot and cool and is happening right now, and you can kind of surf that wave. Sports, racing, driving, these are the like no-brainers in a sense, and I think the first example I know of a game within in-play advertising, it was a mobile game we sold in 2007. But I think there the brand went straight to the developer and gave them $1,000 and like put some logos in there, that kind of thing. But it's such a natural fit. All kinds of sports games, all kinds of racing games, all kinds of driving games works exceptionally well for this. Actions, shooters, first-person shooters, they also work really well. Again, keep contextual fit in mind. If there's a mining colony on Mars, maybe, I mean, yeah, you can find a few, you go inside somewhere, maybe there's a computer screen or a TV screen, use those types of things. The left one, yeah, it's sort of your, I love the Finnish sense of humor. I don't know if anyone can see, but you know, the company who does this in real life, they're called JC Decor, but here they're called JC Dubious. Like, that's, we didn't do that, they did it, but it's awesome. But again, you can also do, like, this one showcases 2 different kinds of integrations, where on the left, they have created an ad unit, they have placed it. Every time you walk past that one, you will see a new ad, because the ad refreshes. The one on the right, it's a little bit more of a quick and dirty, but arguably like the ad stands out a little bit more because of the background. So as the persons who are playing it, like, it really pops and it comes along nicely. Yeah, puzzle, word, simulation games, that's generally a no. I have yet to come across one where it makes sense. There is overall a fairly poor fit. Very little dead space in these games, right? These are the people who are the best at using the full real estate of the screen. There's usually not much movement happening besides the game pieces. That being said, if anyone has a puzzle, word, or simulation games and want to give it a go, like, let's have a chat for sure. But just in general, to give an idea of the type of games where it works best. Now, briefly about viewability. So this is something that most game developers are going to be familiar with in the next few years. Viewability is really the key measurement of taking track of, has this ad been seen? Banners, interstitials, quite easy. If it was on the screen, it was seen. If you have an ad like this one here at the bus stop, you need to calculate. You need to know, has this ad been seen? And when you have a 3D game with multiple people, just rendering the ad is not enough, because maybe you have rendered 5 other objects in front of it. How do you make sure that there's a field of vision that the player has that makes sure that the ad meets the IAB standards of being covering X% of the screen for Y seconds in total to make sure that it's counted as a view? We're super proud that we have 3 patents in this space, and we have focused a lot of our tech and resources. Once we figured out all the SDK business, we have focused a lot on this to be able to measure this, and also to be able to report it back to advertisers, because this is something that is outside of our little bubble of advertising, which is basically dominated by performance. We have, at least for some time, enjoyed the luxury of tracking and being able to measure every cent down to like the 3rd decimal point. But most advertisers can't do that, right? If you're Nivea and you're going to launch a new shampoo, you spend 5 million quid on putting it on buses, and then you hope people buy your shampoo, but you don't really know. Same thing with advertising. But here we will be able to efficiently measure and display this. It also means that ad blockers do not work. Right? You can't put an ad blocker inside of a game. The amount of people using ad blockers on desktop is enormous, and like every time mine goes away and I go to YouTube, I feel like, what the hell has happened? Like, what is this? So many ads. So I mean, even a lot of rendered ads on web and other formats are not actually being seen. But we have a solution for that. The industry as well will come up with a solution. There will be standardization from IAB or from some sort of governing body to properly define it. And I think that's going to be the main requirement for sort of mass adoption among advertisers. Briefly, because there's just a couple of minutes left, I'm going to talk a little bit about AR and VR. They are really great environments for ads. They're super immersive, and it's not just for gaming, right? These are for the social, your rec roomy type experience as well. They're quite immersive, and there's a lot of things happening at the same time. There's an enormous demand and interest from advertisers, because they don't know yet how few people are unfortunately doing this. However, my favorite factoid that I picked up a few months ago is that at least up until November last year, Oculus Quest 2 had outsold the PlayStation 5. That's of course because PlayStation can't deliver enough PlayStation 5s, but at least they did outsell them for some time. So that's a useful one. And I'm not making fun of Meta or anything like that. It's an awesome product, and they have shipped 10 million units, which is fairly impressive. 10 million people is definitely enough to sort of build a market around, and it's going to be accelerating as well. Finally, I want to show this because, again, just to get an idea of how things can work in AR. I actually think this video is 4 years old because, like I said in the beginning, we've kind of gone backwards. We started doing super sexy, cool things, but no one wanted to buy them, so we had to kind of go backwards a bit. But so this is how an ad in an AR environment would work, and this is a demo that we made with our friends at Rovio. But so you can see the AR thing. You click the billboard, it loads up a video that is being shown. We've cut it down because it's not so fun to see. You get a full screen landing page.
The cutest puzzle game ever.
And you can be taken straight to the App Store, download the thing, and then you go back to your AR environment. Really, really cool, really, really simple. Well, I mean, simple from the user point of view. It's a bit more challenging tech-wise. There's going to be some room for questions, but there's also going to be a panel relatively soon where I'm going to be talking to some of our friends who are already doing this. That one is going to be a little bit more focused on well, how do I actually do it? How do I get started? Less macro level fluff from me and more usable hands-down things. So please stick around for that panel as well. And now I'm happy to take any questions.
Yep, have you got any questions for the Incredible Thor? That's your new name, the Incredible Thor. Anybody? Hello. Take the mic.
How do you see measurement evolving over the next few years with in-play ads?
Yeah, there's going to have to be some sort of standardization, right? And it's probably going to be I mean, it's kind of like Nielsen ratings for TV, like the biggest bullshit scam in the history of everything, where like I mean, there's literally like 5,000 people who decide what everyone in the UK watches. Like it's such a some data scientists should just go in there and kick some ass. But there's going to be some standardization. It's going to be based around viewability. So then, you know, it shifts a little bit back and forth. I mean, currently there's different offers from different platforms. Currently, there's someone saying like, you know, the ad needs to be on at least 5% of the screen for at least 2 seconds of time. So like, there's going to be maybe not that, but something like that. Or there's going to be a technology or a patent, hopefully ours, that's like, well, okay, let's just agree to use this one. This is how it works, integrate it, or commit it, and run with it.
Any more questions? Yep.
Hey, Thorbjörn. Hey. Great show. Going back to 2015, the rise of rewarded video, I think there was a catalyst there to look at the differentiating between banners and interstitials, and then of course the revenue generated from the rewarded consumer-based. Yes, I'd like to spend 22 seconds of my life to increase future play within the game.
Get the golden hand grenade.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then you mentioned that it would be between a 5 to 15% increase in incremental revenue, which is the needle mover, right? I mean, every game developer wants more revenue.
I mean, below 5%, right? It depends. I mean, to some extent, it depends on how much money you make. Some game developers make more money than God, and they're not going to get out of bed for less than 100K. Just accept that, right? C'est la vie. But from what we're seeing from our current ones, and also just in modeling and talking to our friends and other providers, like that's a good benchmark. 15 is on the high end. 5 is still quite okay.
So there is room to grow.
Yeah.
On the adoption.
Yeah, oh, there's absolutely room to, I mean, on all sides, on publisher and on advertiser. And as they both grow as well, I mean, over time, there will be organic increases in eCPMs, fill rates, these things as well, as a higher percentage of brand advertising is being shifted towards it.
Great. Can you give us an idea of the benchmark of that eCPM, where it is now, where it could get to?
It depends very much on, you know, what kind of traffic it is. For programmatic traffic, which is the vast majority, $1 CPM in the US, it's okay, quite okay. So again, very different from rewarded and from other things that require tracking and integration. But then when there are direct campaigns, when there are larger bookings, CPMs can go over $5, they can go, I mean, I know of other providers who have sold very specific campaigns. They can pay $15 to $20 CPMs. Not on an ongoing basis every day, but they say, hey, this week we have this advertiser for this game, perfect fit, they want to buy a lot. So it varies.
And I think the last point is, in terms of the consumer adoption, the intrusiveness, this is, effectively, if you've got real estate in your game, show an advert, it becomes immersive within the game if you get the right context, yeah?
Yeah,
great.
Fair enough.
Any more questions?